Welcome to another NEBA Spotlight. Today, I'm very happy to present to you my friend, Merrill. Merrill, tell us about you. Tell us about your business.
Absolutely. As those of you know, my name is Merrill Loechner. I am founder, chief storyteller, and commercial podcast producer with Smith Douglas Associates. And today I'm going to be talking about using podcasts as a content generation tool. Now, not everyone needs their own podcast. I mean, it's great. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. And not everyone's really up to, starting a whole other business when they're running a business. So we're going to talk about being a guest on other people's podcasts. Now, this is a great way and a great thing to add to your marketing plan because if you are on multiple podcasts, it's a great way to spread your message to different audiences. You're not just saying the same thing to the same people over and over again. Whoever subscribed to that particular podcast, they're going to hear your message and it will spread out that way. Also, if your host is respected, that gives your message a little more credibility. It's the referral method, like, wow, referred this person. This person must be great because I respect Greg. So that's another reason to spread out through podcasts. Also, even if you're nervous, the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be. So that's something that's always to aim for. And what I'll be talking about today is you're going to generate a lot of content. Every time you do a podcast, that's anywhere between 15 to 45 minutes of you telling your story. This is a lot of content that you can use, reuse, rework, and send it out through social, send it out through newsletters, send it out through articles. It's multiple ways of doing this. So things before you do a podcast, ask some questions to the host. What is their focus and who is their audience? Because you don't want to just go into a podcast saying, oh, this is my canned presentation. I'm just going to say the same thing every time. And I'll get into this a little more in a future slide. What assets will you get back? Most will give you a link to the podcast and what's called an embed code. An embed code is something that you can post on your website or your blog that instead of a link that will bring you away somewhere, it's a code where you can actually watch the video or listen to the podcast on your website or within your blog. So that's something you're always going to want to ask for. Transcripts. Ask if you can have a transcript of the podcast. Transcripts are very, very valuable. Some will say, yeah, not a problem. Some will say, nah, I don't do that. It's too much work. And some will say, oh, absolutely, that's an added charge. For the NEBA podcast, it's $50 if you'd like a transcript, because that's how much my transcriptionist charges me. Because, yeah, AI is great to get the basic transcript. They're not always right, and they always mangle proper nouns. So we always want a real human being like Sally to review a transcript. And teasers. Teasers are these little 30-second video clips that you can put on YouTube. It's a YouTube short, it's a TikTok, it's something you can use on social media. A lot of podcasts now will give you some teasers to use because, again, they are trying to get your network to subscribe to their podcast. So they're going to give you as many tools as they can to make that happen. And again, that's something you're going to want to ask for. And always make sure it's not necessarily, you don't need a legal written document, just something like in an email saying, oh yeah, you can make a transcript, you can use this teaser, you can, just so they don't come back later like, hey, you used that transcript. I'm like, well, yeah, you said I could on February 3rd. There's the note. So CYA. Now, if you're going to do this, like I know Kareem has been on like 85 podcasts in the past year. He is specifically going out and trying to find as many podcasts as he can be on. You don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. Remember, we want to use this as a marketing tool. We want to reuse this and send it out through our own network. You can't do that if it's the same thing every time. So you're going to want to tell your story, but shift the perspective. Remember what I said? You want to talk to the podcast producer and see who their target is. What is their podcast about? And they're very different. Even if it's a business podcast, is it about entrepreneurship? talk about entrepreneurship in your business. If it's family businesses, how does your family deal with your business? Is it faith-based? How is your faith helping your business? So you have your same core message, but you're going to talk about different perspectives of that story with each podcast. Remember, you don't want to say the same thing the same way every time. You want to switch it up a bit. And also, unless you only have the same clients over and over again, share new stories. If you've got a new insight or a new client, talk about them. Again, you want a different story each time you talk on a podcast. Okay, congratulations. You've recorded a podcast. Ask your host to give you the launch date. It's like, okay, this is great. When are you launching this? Sometimes it's, oh, end of the week. Sometimes it's 6 months from now, depending on how often they record. So what do you want to do is you want to get that date and then share that on social media. It's like, hey, everyone, recorded an interview on the Acme podcast. It's going to be launched March 15th. Save the date. I'm so excited. Get people excited to listen to it. And then what everybody does, once you've posted it, send it through all your marketing channels. But you're not going to just do this once. It's like posting an ad, like, oh, I put an ad in the newspaper. No one called me. Therefore, advertising doesn't work. You have to do this more than once. And one of the things you can do is, again, those teasers, especially if you can get more than one. You can send out the podcast in the next week. Oh, this is an audio clip from that podcast. If you want to hear the whole thing, click here. 2 weeks after that, this is a different clip from that same podcast. Because as everyone knows with social media, not everyone sees everything you post. You're going to have to post a couple of times. Again, you want that transcript. You can turn that transcript into an article for LinkedIn articles, for print. If you don't know how to do something like that, reach out to Sally. She'll write it for you. You could also take that transcript, multiple blog posts. You don't want to just take the transcript, plonk it on your blog and call it a day. You put 250 words in there. A little while later, put a different 250 words in there. You've got 8,000 words to play with. You can feed it out that way. And also, if the content is evergreen, if you're not speaking about a specific time frame, I have one client, we're just producing her 75th podcast. She's still talking about podcast she recorded 2 years ago. Getting over this cold. If you have any other questions, here is my contact information. If you've never done a podcast before, NEBA podcast is a great way to get your feet wet. It's not live. I talk you through the process and I make sure it's perfect before we release it. Thank you.
Wonderful job, Merrill. You have such quality material. We look forward to supporting you and your podcast. Thank you so much.